Hi, welcome back to our podcast. I'm Heather, and this is my co-host, Seth.
Good to see you again.
And we have Bill Kleyman with us today. I was talking to a client, and she invests in homes, and she was closing on a house, and there was this title agency that she was supposed to send a check over to in the next day or two. And she got an email, had all the bank information to send the money over to $50,000. And she's expecting to do this. So she sends the money over, wires it. 2 days later, she's like, goes to her closing. Where's the money? They're like, oh, you didn't send it yet. She was like, what are you talking about? They were hacked. Anyway, long story short, this happens all the time in business. And there are great cyber liability insurance policies that can protect you and your reputation after the fact. But, how do you save your clients' money, your reputation before it happens? Like they say, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So Bill Kleyman here, a good friend of mine, he's the executive vice president of digital solutions at Switch. He's an industry analyst, board advisory member, writer, blogger, speaker, all of it. And he brings more than 15 years of experience to his role as the executive vice president of digital solutions at Switch. And using the latest innovations such as AI, machine learning, data center design, DevOps, cloud, and advanced technologies, he delivers solutions to customers that help them achieve their business goals and remain competitive in the market. An active member of the tech industry, he was ranked number 16 globally in a study that reviewed the top 100 most influential individuals in the cloud landscape, and number 4 in the industry's top data security experts. So we're really lucky to be able to pick his brain and hear a little bit more about how we can protect our businesses and our clients. Welcome to our podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Heather and Seth. This is an absolutely extraordinary topic to be talking about. I mean, we learned so much in 2020 about the security landscape. And what I want everyone here to listen to, as you're listening to this podcast and you're taking in all this Bill Kleyman energy, it's not caffeine. I just really like this topic. Please make this reflective. Please make this introspective. All of the advice, all the questions that Heather's going to ask us, all the questions that Seth is going to ask us, or ask me at least, I really, my goal is for you to take away at least one or two of these tips so that you can be more secure. Please understand, I work with very large organizations, huge enterprises, but I also work with individuals, like people who are targets. And we're going to talk about that in a minute or two. But thank you for having me. This is a great, great topic of conversation.
Okay. So can you tell us, common folk, a little bit about your role and how companies can achieve their business goals in addition to protecting themselves?
In my role, I get a chance to see security at a very large scale. So at Switch, we are some of the world's largest. We have some of the world's largest hyperscale technology and data center ecosystem, several million square feet of some of the most advanced technology solutions out there. But we also very much focus on security. And in my career, working both, with my day job and outside of it, being a writer and analyst in the space. The biggest challenge that we always see is security taking a back seat to business architecture. What's my sales strategy? How do I get to, point A before I actually secure it? In the most recent study, we saw that more and more technology professionals and business professionals in general are saying, okay, security professionals need a seat at the table early on in the process before I deliver any application, any resource, and so on. Heather, your example about wire fraud is legit. It's legit. It's a really, really scary concept and just so easy where you have to understand, everybody listening, you're a target. I've seen malware and ransomware go after everything from like 80-year-old grandmas. And here's why. They're going to pay $2,000 to get their grandkids' children pictures back. That's just what's going to happen. So if you're an organization, I don't care if you're 5 people or 50,000, taking security approach from a pragmatic perspective, really starting early in the process and everything that you're doing is going to be really, really important because we're mitigating risk. And in 2020, we learned a lot about risk and what happens when data leaks. COVID-19 was a forced accelerator. It was a forced accelerator, and it was a perfect storm for insiders to put data in risk. In that year alone, 85% of employees were more likely to leak data files than before COVID because we're so distributed and we got information everywhere.
What are some of the things that over over the course of when COVID actually came in, what were some of the big revelations that really came out?
We saw, I hope you're sitting down for this. And if you're not, if you're at a standing desk, that's okay as well, right? Get your calorie counts up there. Good job. Or calorie counts down and get your step up. All right. We saw something extra 600% increase in COVID-19 phishing emails, or just phishing emails just in general, right? So the big tip is that, please be careful of what you click. We saw a lot of people going after like the mobile suites, like the Office 365s, targeted attacks, but phishing was by far the most effective. It still is the most effective way to get you to click on something that I want you to click on. And you need to understand whether it's a PDF, a video, a cat GIF. I don't care what it is, right? People are gonna try to go after you. And here's a really scary part: these threats, these emails, they're becoming a lot smarter. 94% of threats come through your inbox. So just think about that for a second. And things like artificial intelligence and cognitive systems, these data-driven solutions, similar things to what power, Tesla cars, for example, these thinking engines, they're going to be doing things like automated social media reconnaissance. These phishing attacks that are going after each and every one of you aren't going to be automated anymore. They're going to be contextualized and seem truly genuine to the extent where victims are much more easily lured. That's what we learned, Seth, is that the ferocity and nature of these attacks has fundamentally changed. Some of the statistics back are saying 60% of data when they hit you is lost within hours, but that same attack could take months. 54% said it took months for them to realize that they were actually breached.
That's crazy.
That is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I've been through trainings with organizations I've worked with, and some of the things are very obvious, like check the email address. So if it's a spammed email address, but it's not something's misspelled. But I've also seen some things recently that, like you were talking about, incredibly deceptive, because had I not known that person and know, hey, look, they would never ask me that, I might have been tempted to click on it. So can you give us some examples of some of the more deceptive things that, may not be just, up front for us to catch?
Yeah. What's really fascinating is the kinds of emails, this deception level that the people are going after. They're going to mimic bank accounts. They're going to mimic all these different kinds of things, your subscription services. What's fascinating as far as like targeted phishing attacks are concerned, right? You get an email, Heather or Seth, from your CEO, and it looks like it's your CEO's email. And he's like, hey, you're in trouble. You need to read this. You need to see this video. You know how many people are going to click on that to see that video? A lot, especially if it's your CEO. My biggest piece of suggestion is you need to be careful where you click. I mean, that's where really, really bad things start to happen. Avoid visiting unknown websites or downloading software from untrusted sources. These malware, these malicious pieces of content are often silently installed, and they compromise your computer, turning, your machine into a zombie, or worse yet, locking it out. Because really your machine is an entryway to the rest of the network, and sometimes the rest of the company as well. So one thing that I recommend, really, really simple thing to do, right? You get an email and just something in your gut, anything just says it's weird, or there's a link in there, or there's a picture. You can always take your mouse, hover gently over that link. You're going to see some really random weird numbers come up, or weird letters that don't actually correspond anything to what you're clicking on. That is a phishing email. That's probably an attempt to get your information. Don't click on it. There's other ways to do it. Listen, if you're not sure, don't click on it. That's like the best piece of advice I can give you, because, an ounce of prevention, right? That one click that you don't do is going to be, fundamentally going to save and change the way you potentially look at other things. That's a big one. Just be careful where you click. And if you don't know, ask somebody that can help you out.
Absolutely. So, what are some ways that you see, like, in the future, this moving forward? You mentioned that there's a lot more AI being involved in it nowadays, not really like people so much. How do you see this evolving?
You're going to see these attacks become a little bit more ferocious. What we need to understand, and what I want everybody listening to understand, is that we've kind of advanced ourselves in this era of hacking, right? Back in the 90s, the mid 90s, we had these phishing, these low sophistication, these Valentine's Day.exe viruses, which are really just annoying beyond anything else, right? When we started to see hacking become an industry in the mid 2000s, and now you have these sophisticated, these complex landscapes in the 2015 and beyond today. today, what we need to understand is it's not just an industry, it's an economy. Okay, it's an economy of hacking where, you can buy social security numbers, you can do denial of service, per hour, you can get medical records, custom exploits, Facebook accounts, all of that stuff is available on the dark web to the extent where, an average breach for a company costs $4 million, right? And this you take the average all over the place. It could be much more, it could be much less, but obviously the brand impact is huge. So the one thing that, that from an advancement perspective, what I recommend everybody doing is really to make sure that you practice good password management, right? Heather Blonde 123 is not going to be a good password. Sorry for to put you on the spot. I'm sure that's not your password.
I'm going to go change mine.
There you go. Be aware of how much information you put on social media. Please be aware of that. That's why I don't like doing these Facebook puzzles of like, oh, hey, what am I going to look like in 20 years? Or, you're putting up your vaccination card online, or you're doing like a quiz. What were you doing in high school? Who was your first love? What's your favorite pizza? I mean, these are great tools to use for me as a bad guy.
Because I'm in a frequent flyer group and someone had taken a picture of like their card and like saying, oh, hey, check out all my miles this year or something. Someone hacked into their account just from seeing that and they were able to steal all their miles. And this was from a closed private group too. And so, it's the 2,000 people that are in the group, but it's crazy how that can happen just from like a little picture that someone's like proud of.
Exactly. It's a very simple piece of advice that we often forget because, we feel like we're sharing this stuff. There are bots, there are engines out there, and they do things either like sentiment analysis, which will literally go through message boards, public social media channels, anything, and autonomously scour that data and then correlate it for the person that's trying to actually get this research out. These are data-driven tools. They're very readily available right now, like where you can actually do this kind of stuff. There are very good use cases for that. If you're, for example, trying to figure out what other people think about your organization, some of the chatter in social media, that's really great stuff. You can improve your product and your services. But if I'm the bad guy, I will scour public Facebook posts, Twitter, LinkedIn, and get all sorts of good information from you that I can then manage. So in the future, when these attacks become smarter, more ferocious, it's going to be up to you to keep things like software up to date. That's a really, really easy one. I'm going to tell you a funny little anecdote, Seth and Heather. I was talking to a friend recently, and they received Norton antivirus as a part of their internet package, right? And it was free for like a year. Then after a year, this person's like, well, I stopped updating it. I'm like, why did you stop updating? Well, because then I would have had to have registered it, and I would have had to have paid my money for it. I'm like, so you have an antivirus that you haven't updated in a year? Yeah, but I mean, it's installed. I'm like, huh. How long would you drive around with the check engine light on?
Yeah.
Until it broke in the middle of a highway? Or how long do you want to ride around with a gas light on E? Right? It's your risk to take. I almost told him, like, dude, uninstall Norton. Your computer will run faster probably, because right now it's useless on your machine. To that point, don't be afraid of updates. Please install them. Please install them. And not just on your machine, on your phones, right? If you have an IoT home, or you have devices like a Philips Hue or your favorite, device, update those as well, because these become points of entry for a bad guy who's very motivated to enter in, because hacking and breaking into somebody is a chess game, right? You don't want to be an easy chess player, right? You want them to knock on all the doors and try and get in until they hit a dead end and simply can't get any further. But as a good hacker, what you're doing is you're trying to break through layers of security and information until you get to the honeypot, the gold, what you're actually trying to do. That's the phishing scam, right? That's the easy one. Otherwise, you look for specific exploits. That's how you do it. These attacks are going to become a lot more ferocious. What you're trying to do is not necessarily stop an attack, because every single person that's listening to this is going to encounter a malicious actor. Now, it's how far they get, and that's called risk mitigation, is really entirely up to you.
So you were mentioning softwares, and and I've used a bunch of them in my professional career. And do you have a list? Because what we looked at is how much back end resources does it take? Because it does slow your computer down sometimes. Some of them do, because they're they use a lot of resources behind the scenes. And then you have the ones that are they advertise, well, we're whitelist versus, I guess, a blacklist. Can you kind of elaborate on what the differences are in between those softwares?
There's a few different types of tools out there. And something that people can read about, everyone's used to your traditional antivirus, anti-malware, like we said, Norton and all those other things. I like technologies like, and please understand that I am not endorsing, and I'm not,
Right.
this is just some stuff that I've had a chance to work with. So like Malwarebytes is a pretty good tool. And although, yes, you might take a performance hit, machines these days have a whole lot of RAM and a whole lot of CPU processing power. They can absolutely handle this stuff. In fact, if you probably take a look at your computer right now, Chrome or your favorite browser is going to be taking up way more resources than your favorite antivirus program that's running on there. The one thing I do recommend is anybody running things like their Mac OS or a Windows machine, be up to date and use those Windows security tools that are natively embedded, because they have become better. They do monitor changes to your operating system. They do try and make better tools to prevent this kind of stuff. Here's another example. You can use Chrome. And inside of Chrome, and the other browsers have this as well, there's a password checking tool, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where if something happens and it's hey, your password for this website has been found on a list, you should change it. For the love of everything, change your password, because what Chrome is doing and what these other services do is they scour the internet and the dark web to see if those credentials are actually available. In fact, that's what some corporations do. They will go on the dark web and scour databases to see if their corporate information is leaked in places that it shouldn't be leaking. Intellectual property, that includes credentials, passwords, usernames, emails, everything. So that's how you do that. So these are really simple tools that are already natively embedded. Another thing, if you're a business owner and you're listening to this, another set of tools are called EDR, endpoint detection and response. These are technologies like CrowdStrike, Cylance. There's a couple of other ones out there, RSA, for example. And these are much more advanced behavior analytics tools that can spot and monitor anomalous behavior on an endpoint. Sometimes they have an agent. Sometimes they don't have an agent. So you can do agentless monitoring of network traffic. Now, these are usually EDR tools for larger organizations, not really for individual consumers. For individual consumers, I recommend using native operating system tools. I recommend using things like good password managers. Please keep your passwords complex. Anything that's like a 6-7 character password with no special characters, capital letters, and just numbers. I mean, you're talking like seconds for somebody to brute force and figure what that out is. It's really obnoxious. So make sure you make them super complex, use numbers and characters and so on. But those are the kinds of tools you can take a look at. So larger businesses, look at EDR, endpoint detection and response. These are much smarter, data-driven tools, broader spectrum of threat and analytics. For everyone else listening, just your typical consumer things like Malwarebytes, native tools within the browsers, and just good password control are things to be aware of.
Okay. And speaking of the future, I know you have like your thumb in all sorts of different stuff. What's some like fun, exciting technology that you're really looking forward to kind of coming out on the forefront with?
So what's really fascinating and what I've been really enjoying seeing are improvements in how we work with and back up our data. So cloud computing, right? That's a big one. It's fascinating because a lot of folks don't necessarily understand that cloud in itself is like a hotel. Okay, we'll house all of your data and we'll protect it, but it's you who has to lock the door. So some of the things that I've been seeing out there is a better understanding around security and certainly the security around backup systems. So I'm really, really excited to see what some of those things are and how we can make it easier for everyone to protect their data. Another interesting aspect that I'm certainly excited about are going to be some of the AI-driven anomalous behavior type of detection tools that will immediately be able to take proactive action against some kind of a threat without you even have to knowing. I think a sandbox tool, for example, imagine a security device that sees an attack happen. It says, I don't know what this attack is. I don't know what's happening, but it looks weird. So I'm going to send it into a little sandbox area that it can't do any damage. And so some of those are some of the tools that we're beginning to see as well. And again, it's not that the hacker can't get in, it's that you're mitigating some of that stuff. Another big one is going to be artificial intelligence and automation in all of our systems. Let me give you a perspective. 85% of breaches that happen against corporate systems was a situation where there was a patch or an update available. Just no one applied it. 85%. It's a lot of people just like who could have completely mitigated that threat. Now there are tools that will do that stuff autonomously without disrupting your system, without disrupting your network, and without taking you down. And that's really important to be able to do that parallel level updates while still keeping your system up and running. I'm really, really excited about some of those tools that help remove the chaotic nature of security sometimes, because it can be complex. It could be multi-vendor integrated and can do some of that stuff autonomously for you. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, that is really neat. One of the things we've been hearing about a little bit, I know we have to wrap up soon, we're almost out of time, but I'm part of I live right around the corner from the Federal Reserve down here in Dallas, and I'm part of the women's leadership group there. And I was at a luncheon just before COVID, so it's a little bit of a while ago, but it was about blockchain, and they were talking about how corporations can use it, and hospitals have been using it to protect hospital records, and like Maersk, the big shipping conglomerate, had all their files stolen, and it cost them billions to recover. But they've since then switched all their records, like everything that's in every single container and every ship is now backed up on the blockchain. And I thought that was just so incredible how you can do something like that. And we're hearing it with like the non-fungible tokens now, where like even small time artists can do this. How do you see that kind of influencing smaller consumers, smaller businesses, and mid-sized businesses? I mean, Maersk is like a huge, billions and billions, but for someone who's making, $1 million a year, maybe, like a company.
Doesn't even have to be that much. So what's really fascinating about what you said, Heather, is the first thing that people think of when they think of blockchain is
Bitcoin.
Boom! You nailed it. Good job. But that's not the thing, right? Remarkably, blockchain is a technology. This is so cool, guys. Everybody listening to this. So blockchain is actually a technology for the creation of a decentralized public record of digital information. So the data, that's the block, is stored in a public database, which is the chain, and then can consist of any information, right? It's really the first real digital technology that offers a way for unsecured parties to refer to a common indelible, so you append only, can't change it, digital record. So you mentioned a really fun use case, Maersk. And so what they did is they actually created a cooperative called TradeLens, if you remember that's I think that's what you're referring to. And it was something that was created, by both IBM and Maersk. Now there's other examples as well. Spotify uses blockchain as a decentralized database to correlate artists with licensing agreements and tracks, right? To make sure that that you're able to resolve some of these longstanding issues that have been happening in the industry. And there's other ones as well, everything from healthcare to diamond exchanges. That's actually De Beers did an example as well. There you go, right? Where they took 5 leading diamond manufacturers that have been working with De Beers, and they developed this thing called Tracer, TRACR, and it's the first blockchain platform ever to securely track diamonds across the entire full value chain, where you as an auditor can see where they go. So we're talking about being able to go from like the mine to the cutter to the polisher, right through directly to the jeweler. And so you're able to do all that. They're tamper-proof records, data authenticity, and you can see that where these diamonds are going and how they're flowing. So blockchain is really a decentralized method where you can't actually change the digital record. You can see it and it validates that information. There are going to be a ton of different kinds of use cases above and beyond Bitcoin where you can actually use this kind of stuff. Everything from insurance to ledgers to networking solutions, obviously Bitcoin, working with digital recording and so on. A lot of really interesting things out there. So if anybody's listening and you're curious about blockchain, that's where you can start taking a look at some use cases above and beyond Bitcoin.
Absolutely. And especially insurance. I can see it being very, very useful as far as like policies, when you have to have additional insureds and just having it sent directly to them. Absolutely. You
can check out what AIA Insurance did. They actually created a new platform called the Hyperledger Fabric that allows banking partners to share required policy data and documentation on a real-time basis and reduce the time needed to process insurance applications. Like you said, pretty cool stuff.
Wow.
Thank you so much for joining us today. It was really, really interesting and really informative.
It is my pleasure. Everybody listening, hey, I'm not a shy individual. You can find me on Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook. My Twitter handle is @QuadStack, QUAD Stack. I share information all the time. I write a lot of reports. I do a lot of speaking on everything from cloud to data centers to security. So don't be shy. Reach out and let's be friends.